one, and liftoff.
Man, y'all did this up, man. Shout out to my brother Jim Bob over Shorts. Y'all can check him out on goddamn TikTok if you want to, man. And he even on YouTube. Thanks for the research you did, Brody. Thanks for loading me up, bros.
Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%.
Challenger, go at throttle up.
Roger, go at throttle up.
It happened just over 1 minute into flight.
Hey, let me give them the backstory. So check this out. I was in a conversation with a dear associate of mine, a dear friend of mine, and I brought something to their attention, right? And I said, hold up now. That event never occurred. And the event I was referring to was about the Challenger 7 incident back in 1986. I was in middle school when this happened.
Let's go back to January of 1986. Originally built in 1975 as a test vehicle for the Space Shuttle program, the Challenger wouldn't be transformed into an actual spacecraft until 1979. It was first launched in 1983 for the mission that would entail the program's first spacewalk.
Look, I was one of those kids that was watching this in school, and we was watching this when it happened that day. I grew up in a small town called Lake Placid, Florida. What's up, Green Dragons? You see what I'm saying? And we was watching this when it happened that day. And this event stunned, and as I grew up to become older and start being a researcher, I also found out that this event fooled a nation of people.
Now let's go back to January of 1986.
It was also the shuttle that carried the first female American astronaut, Sally Ride, as well as the first African-American astronaut, Guion Bluford. The flight of the Challenger was supposed to be historic because of one of its crew members, 37-year-old Christa McAuliffe. Though she was normally just a social studies teacher from Concord High School in New Hampshire, McAuliffe had been selected by NASA's Teacher in Space program to be the first educator in space. Designed to inspire children and generate publicity for NASA, the plan called for McAuliffe to accompany the Challenger astronauts into orbit and teach a few lessons while they were there.
McAuliffe had been selected by NASA's Teacher in Space program to inspire children and generate publicity for NASA.
Because of McAuliffe's presence, the launch was heavily covered by the media, and NASA itself provided numerous schools with a raw satellite feed. This meant thousands of school children, including those from McAuliffe's own class, were watching live when the tragedy occurred.
Now, I remember her image, and they used Miss McAuliffe to engender compassion, from the people. They used her because this never happened. These people are still alive, as you will see, as my brother Jim Bob is going to point out. So they played on the emotions and minds of a nation of people, and this is was one of their pawns that they used. And I want you to pay close attention because I'm here to tell you I was a part of this experience that NASA had did on the collective mind fuck they played on a nation of people.
Christa McAuliffe wasn't meant to be the only passenger on.
And because she was a teacher and stuff, that's why all the teachers had us kids in 75 in all the schools, especially elementary schools, watching this event. And we're in Florida, and we was able to go outside because Lake Placid is not that far in distance from Cape Canaveral, from the Cape Canaveral. I'm sorry, we're not far from Cape Canaveral, and we was able to actually see the takeoff from a distance.
Challenger who would capture the attention of children. NASA also made efforts to get Sesame Street star Big Bird on the shuttle. They even contacted Carol Spinney, the beloved actor who played the giant yellow Muppet, about participating in the mission. The plan was never approved by Mission Control, but in 2015, NASA did confirm that the conversation with Spinney and the producers of Sesame Street took place.
Now listen, that goes to show you how well thought out this con was. The only reason why they opt out of Big Bird because it would have traumatized a lot of kids. if Big Bird had been on the goddamn plane. Just like it traumatized a lot of us kids when we was told Santa Claus got hit by a goddamn train. Or wasn't even real.
The pilot for the mission, which was called STS-51L by NASA, was Mike Smith. It was to be the first and last spaceflight of his career. Smith also holds the distinction of speaking the last words recorded by any member of the Challenger.
It never occurred. But in so many words, they said, "Oh no, it is. You just a conspiracy theory." I said, "Hold on." I said, "What if I could present some facts to you that is irrefutable?" "Oh no, anybody could do anything. You could dress up nowadays. This, that, and the third." The 1986 shuttle incident never occurred. They didn't believe it. They wouldn't even let me present them the facts before they refuted the facts. In science, you do not do that. You gather all the facts first before you draw a conclusion. You cannot draw a conclusion missing facts. Because truth, the only thing that can stand scrutiny, a lie can't. JB, bring it to him, Brody.
On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster happened. As the story goes, 7 astronauts lost their life that day. But just like the formation of NASA under Operation Paperclip, if you look hard enough, you can find reasons to question it. And I'm the kind of guy who believes that there is no such thing as coincidence. As it seems, we've found Judith Resnick and Sharon Krista McCoffey leading successful law university careers years later. Or this guy, Michael J. Smith, with a career at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Or this fellow, Richard Scobie, who is the CEO of Cows and Trees. And then there's these two, but they claim to be their brothers, but anybody could pretend. Of course, that's only 6 of 7, but it does raise a lot of questions. It's easier to fool people than to convince them they were fooled. And NASA seemed to be pros.
Let's talk about January 28th. But let's talk about January 28th.
January 28th wasn't just the day that the Challenger was supposed to lift off.
Right.
It was also the date scheduled for President Ronald Reagan's State of the Union address.
Now, everybody know that here, this is when they come up with their false flags. Even 9/11 itself was a false flag. And during election time, it always happens. Is it not suspicious that the day that Reagan supposed to give a speech that this happened, and then guess what? He had to come back and give an emergency speech. And the incident sealed his presidency into the subconscious mind of generations to follow. Do you know what these people are attaching to events, creating events just to get a big portion of real estate of the most important part of your mind, the subconscious part of your mind, to program you? Wow.
However, with the disaster only 6 hours old, the president opted to delay the annual speech and instead personally update the American people on the tragedy.
The crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger honored us for the manner in which they lived their lives.
This speech would be hailed as one of Reagan's greatest. Quite a testament for a man whose nickname was the Great Communicator.
Thank you.
The explosion of the Challenger scattered wreckage over a vast swath of the Atlantic Ocean, and salvage crews would spend weeks recovering all of the pieces. In fact, it would take 6 weeks until naval divers finally located the resting place of the crew cabin, 100 feet beneath the water, approximately 15 miles east of Cape Canaveral. The remains of the astronauts were recovered, and those that could be identified were returned to their families.
Man, do you understand? They never had bodies to recover. It never happened. The people are still... JB, hit them with it.
It's easier to fool people than to convince them they were fooled.
For example, in December of 1996, almost 11 years after the explosion, beachgoers at Cocoa Beach, over 20 miles away from Kennedy Space Center, found 2 large pieces of the shuttle washed up in the surf.
Now listen.
These were so big, NASA had to use a front-end loader to pick them up and move them.
Now listen, make it make sense. These things are so colossal, and I know that mass loses a percentage of its amount submerged in water. The Titanic pieces didn't wash up ashore. You got ships right now that's not even that far out into the goddamn ocean that hasn't washed up ashore, that sunk over goddamn in the Caribbeans in the shallowest parts of the ocean that's near the islands haven't washed up ashore yet.
In 1715, a ship sank off Florida's coast. 300 years later, divers stumbled upon its insane cargo. In a shallow stretch of water just off the Florida coast, a group of treasure hunters are about to make an incredible find. After all, there on the ocean floor are the relics of a doomed ship that made its last voyage 3 centuries ago.
How 11 years later that this colossal, heavy-ass piece of metal that is supposedly from a space shuttle that never had people on it, you hear me? It can wash up from the bottom of the sea after 11 years and find itself miraculously on shore. Please. You can go for that, but I'm not going for it. They had to get a front end loader to get this motherfucker.
Washed up in the surf. The pieces were so big, NASA had to use a front end loader to pick them up and move them from the beach. The death of a civilian, Christa McAuliffe, was especially damaging to the space program.
That's what it was. She was a civilian.
In fact, it would be 22 years before NASA would send up another civilian. Incidentally, that civilian would be Barbara Morgan, who was Christa McAuliffe's backup for the original Challenger mission.
Hold up. Are you listening? Are you listening? Backup for the original person, the original first quote-unquote civilian. She was a part and played a part of the team in the first civilian going. She was there part of NASA then. And guess what? Years later, when everybody forgot that she ended up being the second civilian after 20-some years of the 1986 space shuttle so-called alleged explosion in the next.
Who, like McAuliffe, was a teacher of social studies and English.
Wow.
Before NASA would send up another civilian.
How many years was it?
Them from the beach.
How many was it?
The death of, in fact, it would be 22 years before NASA would send up another civilian. Incidentally, that civilian would be Barbara Morgan, who was Christa McAuliffe's backup for the original Challenger mission. Morgan, who like McAuliffe was a teacher of social studies
looked more
and
like
English,
Christa than
joined the crew of
Barbara.
Space Shuttle Endeavour for a successful mission in 2007.
Hold on. Let me see. 1 second. Y'all bear with me here, huh? Y'all bear with me, right?
From the beach. The death of
Okay, boom. So I see the girl on the right, who's supposed to be Barbara, right? And Christa on the left, right? Christa is the civilian, first civilian that they sent that supposedly died in 1986, right? And 20-some years later, Barbara, who's supposed to be on the right, look at Barbara now. And I'm thinking that they just had the same girl playing Barbara in the two different time frame pictures, but when you look at who they say Barbara, the second civilian that is sent up is, she just looks like an older fucking Christa. They just got the Indonesian looking girl or the Hinduistan looking girl in 2 pics with Christa, you know, to for the premises. It looks like to me, because the second civilian 20-some years after Christa supposedly died in 1986 that had went up after Christa looks nothing like the girl on the right who's playing Barbara.
McAuliffe
Now look at the pictures.
Especially damaging to the space program, and the fallout would last for decades. In fact, it would be 22 years before NASA.
Okay, boom. Look at that. Do that look like the Indonesian Hindustan looking girl on the right that's supposed to be Barbara? Or do this version of Barbara looks like another version of Christa? Look at the features now.
Incidentally, that civilian would be Barbara Morgan.
Now look at Barbara as a young girl, and that's supposed to be Christa on the left, who she's with. So those are the 2 different pictures that she's in, right? On this one right here, she looks like she was, okay, look, younger, and the same girl in the 2 different pictures with the same woman, right? But the woman whose image is Barbara's image as an older woman does not look like this girl on the right.
Krista McAuliffe's backup for the original Challenger
Go
mission.
back and look at it for
Morgan,
yourself.
who,
You
like
look
McAuliffe, was a
right there. Again, it looks like an older Krista.
The disaster was also acknowledged in the scripts of then-popular television shows like Punky Brewster and Star Trek: The Next Generation.
We were watching the space shuttle take off. It exploded.